Thank you, Bob. Good morning. Like the man said, I'm David Scholl. I am the Republican candidate for Congress here in Florida's District 2. I welcome you all here, members of the Tea Party, fellow patriots. And I want you to know I stand with you in your fight, and I appreciate what you're doing. You are taking time out of your busy lives, and you are standing up for liberty and freedom. You are bringing an energy and excitement to politics in our country that we have not seen in over 100 years. You are a second revolution of Americans. You are an awakening. You are a group of Americans that for too long has been taken for granted, abused, and ignored. And I stand with you in your fight for limited government, lower taxes, and a restoration to the return of the original intent of our Constitution. I want you to know that when you release your contract from America, that is a document I will proudly sign immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, as honored as I am to be with you today, it is a double honor for me to share the podium with Colonel Bud Day. You know, as a 1981 graduate, I'm a 1981 graduate of the Air Force Academy. Men like Colonel Day, fellow members of the 4th Allied POW Wing, those men are legend. They are a legacy to all men and women in the United States Armed Forces. And they define for all of us what it truly means for service, sacrifice, duty, honor, and country. Love of country. Those men, Colonel Day, they stand in stark contrast to our current leaders in Washington. The Pelosi's, the Franks, the Floyd, the Dodds, and our own president. Those men and women with Colonel Day, excuse me, there was no women, but those men with Colonel Day, they embody the fighting man's code of conduct. If you're not familiar with it, it begins with the phrase, I am an American fighting man. I serve in the forces which guard our country and our way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. That same code ends with the phrase, I will never forget that I am an American fighting man, responsible for my actions and dedicated to the principles which made my country free. I will trust in my God and in the United States of America. Could you imagine our current leaders uttering those words? Could you imagine our current leaders even trying to live to that code under the difficult circumstances that Colonel Day and men like our own Colonel Howard Hill, our Colonel Ron Webb in the back, men that I served with, Major John Furr, Colonel Jerry Driscoll, and men that I admire, Captain Lance P. Sijon. These men and women define what true service and sacrifice is for all of us. And they stand in stark contrast to our present leadership. Our present leadership, they're all about service and sacrifice, but it's your service, your sacrifice, as if we were mere serfs living on the Lord's land. That is not what America is about. This administration, in 15 long and agonizing months, they have taken us from a nation that once answered the call of a young president who said, we will send a man to the moon and return him safely. And we did it in less than 9 years. We are now a nation that cannot even build a fence on our southern border in 10. We are a nation now that no longer dreams of going to the stars. We are a nation now that bows to our creditors and apologizes to our enemies. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a lover of American history. I am drawn to the early patriots, our founding fathers, and I think back when they drafted our Declaration of Independence and then they signed it, addressing our grievances with King George III of England. They risked all. They were willing to sacrifice all. Their lives, the lives of their family, and all their property, all in the hopes that they would form a self-governing nation founded on the principles of liberty and freedom. And they did so that you and I could live free. Those men and women, they stand in stark contrast to our present Congress, our present leaders, the 545, the 435 members of our House, the 100 members of our Senate, our 9 justices, and our own president. What of their commitment? What of these 545? These are the ones that design our tax code, start our wars, and ruin our economy in pursuit of their social agenda.
Right.
With these individuals, what would they have sacrificed? What would they have endured, like the patriots that have come before us? Would they have endured the bitter cold of Valley Forge? Would they have crossed the Delaware on Christmas Day? Would they have marched on Trenton? I found that doubtful. Our own president was not to be bothered on Christmas Day on the beaches of Waikiki to deal with a terrorist over the skies of Detroit. And I doubt that they would have stood with General Washington on the eve of victory at Yorktown, had he not been paid for 6 months, poorly fed, poorly clothed, and poorly equipped. I doubt that they would have endured that sacrifice. And would they have stood with Colonel Joshua Chamberlain on the Little Round Top, running low on ammunition? Would they have answered the call to fix bayonets and charge? Or would they have cowered behind the tree? Not these leaders. They would not have manned the trenches of World War I. They would not have obeyed the order to go over the top. They would not have stood shoulder to shoulder with their comrades in the landing crafts at Omaha Beach and during the island hopping campaign of the Pacific. And when the doors flung open, they would not have charged and taken the beach. They would not have endured the bitter cold of a Korean winter. They would not have held their post at Khe Sanh. They would not have thrown back the Tet Offensive. And where were these individuals during Grenada, Panama, and the liberation of Kuwait? Well, we know where they were during Operation Iraqi Freedom and the war in Afghanistan. We listened to their early praise and support, often the praise of the Sunshine Patriot, and we heard that same praise turn to condemnation when the war grew long and hard and difficult. Where are they now? Where are they now when millions of Americans yearn for work? Quite frankly, I wish this administration would stand down and retire the field. Our president, our own King George III, he has imposed his leftist mandate of a national health insurance on an unwilling American people. But now the states, you and the American people, you are rising up in revolt. You will no longer stand by as colonies of an imperial federal government. You will not allow them to tax us into bankruptcy and ignore our Constitution. And I stand with you in that fight.